Welcome back. Today I want to go through a game that I played a couple of nights ago on Lichess, and it was the strangest opening to any game that I've experienced in a long time. You'll see what I mean as soon as we get a few moves into the game, but first, if you're new to my channel, I'm not a titled player or a chess coach. I'm just a random person who enjoys chess, and I'd like to get better at it. One way to get better at chess, supposedly, is to analyze one's games. Now, in this game, you can see that my opponent opened with h3. I think over the many years of me playing chess, I've seen probably just about every possible first move that there is. I think there are 20 possible first moves, right? Because you've got 8 pawns, each of which can go 1 or 2 spaces, and you've got 2 knights, each of which can go to 2 different squares on the first move. So I think that adds up to 20. But this one, I think, is the one that I've seen the least. I only have a memory of seeing this once before, and if I'm not mistaken, that time I played d5 as my opening move, and the opponent played d4, and then we were just in a d-pawn opening. And I don't remember how the rest of the game turned out, but it basically just turned out to be a regular game, except the opponent had played that early. But I didn't want to get into a queen's pawn opening, so I played c5, which I don't know if that's even good or not. I've just now run the game review, whatever that's called here on Lichess, and it turns out to be okay, I guess. Now, it says that the opponent could play e4 here or c4, and they would be fine. And honestly, I expected either, one of those 3 pawns to come shooting forward at this point. I knew that if it was the e-pawn, then we'd be in the Sicilian defense, which I really didn't want, but I wanted to prevent the queen's pawn opening. I figured if they played that, I could work my way around it somehow. Well, trying this again, because Lichess just moved a bunch of pieces randomly that weren't even on my move list. I don't know why it did that. What I was saying was, if they did play this and we entered the Sicilian defense, then I figured I could just get this knight out, and I would basically be playing the English, but from black's side. Or the reverse English, I don't know. That's the way I'm thinking of the Sicilian in this instance. But what happened after I played c5, my opponent did not play e4, d4, or c4. They played the next pawn, g3. And I began to suspect one of 2 things at this point. Either the opponent was trying to play the hippopotamus defense in a weird sort of order, because I believe in that defense you end up fianchettoing both bishops, with these pawns moved up like this. Then you move these 2 pawns and put the knights behind them. But usually you don't get the H and the A pawns, out that early. So I thought it's possible that they're trying to play a hippo defense, but in the wrong order or in a weird order. Or they're doing the thing that my daughter used to do, which is just move every pawn in turn. And I guessed that right here. And I thought, you know what? It's too late to abort the game, and I'm not going to resign it. So if that's what they end up doing, I'm just going to play as principally as I know how. And that includes taking the center. That includes developing pieces. So I played d5. So I have control over, these center squares. I'm occupying 1 center square. I'm ready to develop at least 1 piece. And my opponent confirmed my suspicions by playing f3. I don't know what all the possible good moves here are for black. Stockfish says knight to f6 or e5. I thought about e5 here, but as I'd already mentioned, I was thinking about the reverse English at this point, or what I imagined to be the reverse English. So I got the knight out to c6, and my opponent continued to move each pawn in turn 1 square at a time in reverse alphabetical order. Obviously, it would have made more sense to me if they'd started with the A pawn, right? A through H, but they went H through A. Maybe because H3 is the first move isn't as suspicious as A3 is the first move. I don't know. Now here, E5 is listed as my best move. That is what I played because, again, taking control of the full center here, not to mention that one over there too. At this point now, I am definitely considering, getting out the knight. I'm not sure where, if I want to go that way with it, maybe the bishop over here. And since they've made no move to attack the center, I'm not worried that putting my bishop here on d6 blocks my queen from defending my d-pawn. And my opponent played d3. And again, since they were making no effort to come after my king or any of the center pawns, I decided to leave, my king side intact for just a moment, and I played this b-pawn in order to fianchetto. Now, it says my advantage has dropped here. If my opponent will play bishop to g2 or knight to e2, we're actually staying pretty close. But by this point, I'm pretty sure they're not going to play anything like that. Also, I had no suspicion that they were about to. They played c3. I fianchetted this bishop over here, as I had said, protecting the knight, and now I'm ready to get out the kingside pieces, and my opponent continued to play the pawns 1 at a time in order. So I did play bishop to d6, as I mentioned. It's, supporting 2 of these pawns. My d-pawn isn't defended right now, which might end up being a problem, but I am, going to get the knight out to 1 of these 2 squares, which will defend the d-pawn that they're not after yet. It's still suggesting for my opponent knight to e2 or bishop to g2, but I think you can guess what they played next, and yes, it was a3. Now, I have had some opponents play very strange openings in the past, things that looked ridiculous. I've had opponents play h4, g4, and then a4, b4 right off the bat, which probably, according to Stockfish, gives me a huge, strategic advantage according to the evaluation. But then that opponent is so good at tactics that they would just decimate me in the rest of the game. But I don't think I've ever had anyone other than my daughter play a full row of pawns like that. So I was fairly confident here. I got this knight out. I am prepared to castle, but I don't know if I want to do it yet. And now I fully expected my opponent to actually move pieces. I didn't know which ones they would choose. I thought maybe they would get these two bishops out, possibly bring the knights to the middle. Sometimes I've had people, like my daughter would play these rooks up here so that they could go back and forth across that empty rank. But my opponent continued with their pawn shenanigans, but in reverse order this time, starting with the A pawn. Stockfish says I can castle, I can play F5 even. It says, you know what, let's go ahead and completely dominate this row here. But it looks to me a little bit like they were coming down further. I wasn't yet fully convinced that they were going to continue with their pawn shenanigans. I thought maybe this is the moment where they start doing tactical things that I don't know how to, respond to. So I blocked the A pawn by playing A5. That turns out to be an inaccuracy, but only if my opponent will play a sensible move at this point. They did not. They played B4. Now that, of course, is a blunder because I can just take it. I mean, I have 3 pieces pointed at that square, right? Both of these pawns, not to mention the knight, and even back here, this bishop is helping with that too. I decided to take with the A pawn, although it looks like the C pawn would have been just as good. And this, of course, was thinking about eventually coming down here, aiming at their rook. My opponent paid no heed to my plans or my worries and continued to play the pawns one at a time. And this is a serious opponent, not a friend. This is a person who's was rated higher than me at the time of this game, and is rated significantly higher than me in Blitz. Oh, Stockfish says I should go ahead and take that pawn too, but I don't know about that. I think that would make me a little bit nervous. I went ahead and castled here, and they should probably take me, but instead they just pushed the next pawn. Now, you see they're pushing each pawn in turn all the way across. Even though I've taken one, they don't care. They're still coming. Stockfish wants me to take that with the E pawn, but instead I took this other pawn over here, thinking that if they took one of these, I'd be able to move the bishop and we could do a queen trade right off the bat. I'm still way ahead, but they're supposed to push this forward. D5, which would attack my knight. But I'm supposed to leave my knight there? Oh my goodness, what if they had done that? Would it be okay if I moved my knight? It says my best move is E4 now. I know I don't want to take that pawn because their queen's guarding it, but can't I just move this knight so they don't take it? It says that they wouldn't take it. Okay, well, if they had played that, I'm sure that they would, but they didn't play that because my opponent was moving each of their pawns in turn. Well, now I can take this pawn, their D pawn. That's probably why they were supposed to move it, is because I have so many ways of taking it right now. I did take it, which turns out to be inaccurate for some reason that I don't fully understand. It might be because I left this pawn undefended. Yeah, they can take that pawn now, I just realized. I was trying pretty hard to not leave things undefended in this position, but I also just took a pawn, so if they took that one, I thought I would be okay. But they continued moving their pawns forward. Now, perhaps I did see that this pawn was undefended, so I pushed this one forward, so now that they can't take the C pawn anymore. My opponent continued moving their pawns in turn. I'm up -9, almost -10 if I will play bishop to C5. Not sure why. Or knight to D4. I could have also played knight to D4. Those are my 2 top moves according to Stockfish. I'm not sure about either one of them. Okay, knight to D4 I do understand because it's aiming for this fork, which would be protected by the pawn. Although it says I wouldn't play that. Okay, well, never mind then. I played rook to E8, lining it up with the king because I thought one of these pawns is going to get taken here before long, and maybe I can start barreling through. My opponent continued with their pawn shenanigans, and I took this pawn so that that's the only thing between my rook and their king whenever I move this knight. For example there, because their e-pawn would be pinned. Instead of doing any of the possible moves that Stockfish would play if given this position, because Stockfish would never put itself in this position. But anyway, they played h5. So they have moved all their pawns across, in this order, and then they moved them all one move in this order. Now that they're missing half their pawns, they're just continuing with this same thing, but in the reverse order once again. Now that time, I got worried. Wait. They're going to come through here? I shouldn't have been worried, according to Stockfish. Bishop to c5 or knight to d4, but I stopped that pawn with h6, and then they played g5. Obviously, I don't have the eval bar when I'm playing the game, so I'm not sure if that's good or not, but I thought, if they take here, I'll take back, and I should be okay, and then I can put my king in front of those 2 doubled pawns. And I finally played knight to d4. As you might expect by now, my opponent played the next pawn in turn. They don't have an f-pawn anymore, so they had to skip to the e-pawn. I'm supposed to check them knight to c2, but apparently that's not what I was thinking of when I put my knight in here. I think I just maybe put it in there to get out of the way of the bishop, which that is my second best move. But I got worried about this pawn here, which has just attacked my bishop, so I took that pawn. Now, I'm still aiming at their rook. They're not supposed to move it right now. Believe it or not, their best move is king to f2, or taking this pawn with the bishop. That's according to the engine. They did not. They did what you've predicted by now, which is a5. Well, I'm still supposed to check knight to c2 or take their free rook down there on h1, but I thought, why not pick up another free pawn? So I picked up another free pawn. Here I expected them to trade rooks with me. They did not trade rooks with me. I would have had mate in 11 if I had checked here now. Well, I had no way of knowing that. I don't know if I considered it. I don't remember for sure. It's been a couple of days, but I assumed they would have just moved out and then I would have gotten a free rook, but I have a free rook now, so I took it. And you won't believe what happened next. Yeah, actually you will. My opponent played g6. Again, supposed to check knight to c2. Why in the world did I move my knight in there if I'm not checking on c2? That's the reason that I'm going through this game, is to see how much better I could have done, because my opponent played an absolutely ridiculous opening and in fact probably should be banned from chess for being so ridiculous. Anyway, I didn't check on knight to c2. I brought another knight in. Why not trade a knight here? I don't know why I didn't take the other free rook, but maybe I wanted to get rid of that knight first. And here my opponent played their absolute best move according to Stockfish. And I'm guessing that's because they can't move either of these pawns straight forward anymore. What I was expecting them to do here was take this pawn. But according to the engine, taking my d-pawn is their best move, taking the d-pawn with their bishop, and they did. At the time, obviously, I didn't think it was their best move. I thought they gave up their bishop for a pawn, which seemed ridiculous. It is my best move to take back, and I did. And I have a mate in 9 now. I was still expecting this at any time. That's actually their best move now, not their g-knight to e2, which is what they played, because that just gives up the knight. I am not supposed to take it. I'm supposed to take this knight over here on c3, which is what I did. It threatens their queen, but obviously they're going to take back, right? It's not their best move to take back. It's their best move to take down here. According to Stockfish, #1 move is to take my f7 pawn, and that's what they did. The engine says I have a mating sequence no matter what I do here, as long as I get out of check. I get out of check any of these ways, or take the pawn. I thought I had to take the pawn, which turns out to be my best move. I thought if I didn't, then they would take my rook. According to the engine, it doesn't matter. Now here it is their best move to take this knight. So my opponent put their queen over here on a4. It is not my best move to take it. Believe it or not, it's my best move to check. Again, knight to c2, and their best move would be to take it. But I just took the queen right there, because that way I get the queen for free. If I went the other way, they would get a knight out of it. This way they don't get anything. Oh, I guess they can still take the knight. It is their best move to take the knight. They didn't take the knight with their knight. They came toward it with the king. Oh, I missed a mate in 1. Oh my goodness. It wasn't listed as a blunder though. Oh, it says I have no mistakes and no blunders and played with 96% accuracy, but I should get dinged on my accuracy for not finding a mate in 1. Right? Knight to f3 is mate in 1? Oh my, I guess it is. Because right now I have a couple of undefended pieces in the position, that pawn and that knight. But if I move my rear knight out of the way, then my bishop guards the knight and my queen guards this pawn. Oh my goodness. And with my knight over here, not only would it be checking the king, but it would be cutting off a square down there. My other knight would be cutting off those 2 squares. My pawn would be hitting 2 of the squares. My bishop would be protecting the knight. My queen would be protecting the pawn, and my other pawn would be cutting off that square. So yeah, that would be checkmate. Wow, I missed that. Also, I could have just taken their knight and let them have mine. I went to protect my knight by moving it back, which is a check. Now here, as soon as I moved that, I thought, oh no, they're going to take this pawn. That's not actually their best move. It's probably what I would have played in this situation. I probably would have taken that pawn, but their absolute best move is king to e1 to run away. And that's what my opponent played. Knight to f3 is not my best move now, but that's what I played. So I checked them again. It looks like they only have 2 legal choices here, left or right. If they go to d1, then I would have mate with the knight to f2. See, I don't think I would have found that. Oh my goodness. I'm not very good at checking with knights and bishops. I probably need to practice it. But my opponent played their best move, so now I have a mate in 4, but that's only if I take their knight with the pawn. Now, I did not. I went over here and checked, honestly thinking that they would take with the bishop, and then I would have to take with the knight, which would be check. But that's not their best move. Their best move is king to f2, and that's what my opponent played. But I found my best move here too, which was to check with the bishop. The knights, of course, now are protecting each other, and the bishop's cutting off all of this. My knights are also cutting off several of these other squares, and my pawn's cutting off this square. So really, they only have 2 moves here, I think. I think they can either get away with the king or take the bishop. And here they didn't play their best move. They ran away with the king. They should have taken the bishop, but then my queen would have taken. Oh, why didn't I see that? I could have just taken their knight now. Oh my, I didn't see that. I went over here and checked. It's still mate in 2, whatever they do. They came toward it, and after all this time, I realized I've been pointing at that rook the whole time, and I never took it. I saw it when I first moved the knight out of the way and had intended to take it, but then things got a little checky down in there and I forgot all about that rook. But here I remembered it and I thought, oh, wait, I can take it now. So I did. They can't take this knight because my queen's guarding it. They can take this pawn though, and that's actually their best move, is to take the pawn. Knight to g3 is not their best move because I can check with this bishop here. And the engine says they would come up here and I would mate, but what if they went down? What if I checked with this bishop and they went down? Would I have a mate then? I guess I would. I would have a mate with the other knight to f3. But I just checked once with this and then realized that they could take my knight, but I didn't really care if they took my knight. It's not their best move to take my knight. They ran away and I checked with this knight and figured that they would take my bishop. They did take my bishop and that's checkmate. Okay, so I did make, even though it did not show it down there, I did make a few mistakes in this game. I missed mate in 1 or mates in 2s multiple times. They weren't even counted as inaccuracies because by that point I was so far ahead that it didn't even matter. I could have just given away a couple of pieces and still won. In fact, my own pieces were starting to get in my way, so that's why I left a few of them where the opponent could just take them. And Stockfish says that's fine, but missing that mate in 1 with the knight to f3, I think I would count that as at least a mistake, not a blunder, because it didn't increase my chances of losing. It didn't really decrease my chances of winning. It just made it harder for me to win by not doing it. But anyway, yeah, if you ever run into an opponent who plays like that, don't abort, don't resign, and also don't respond in kind. If you respond in kind, I mean, unless you want to, if you're enjoying it. But if you want to win, is what I'm saying. If you want to win, I think even though I didn't make the exact best move every time, I played principled chess, which is taking control of center squares and developing my pieces. Even after it became apparent that my opponent was just doing ridiculous things, the reason that I'm ahead here and the reason that I stayed ahead for the rest of the game is because I set myself up to win instead of setting myself up to lose. Now, if you're actually trying to lower your rating for some reason, which I think is against the rules on most of these sites, so don't do it. But that's a good way to do it, is just play like this every time. Now, you might accidentally win a few games because some people wouldn't know how to respond to it. But my point is here is if you see an opponent doing that, even though these weren't the exact top moves of Stockfish, I'm up -2.5 already. And that's because I'm taking control of center squares, getting pieces out, preparing to castle, which is what you're supposed to do. Anyway, I hope that was fun for you. It wasn't that fun for me. It was pretty nerve-wracking, when my opponent started playing that way. And I don't remember when the first moment was that I knew for sure I was ahead. Because even as late as here, move 18, as I mentioned, I was a little worried. I didn't know if they were going to take there. I didn't know how dangerous it would be if they moved forward. I do know that in general, it's a bad idea to not move any of your pieces until all your pawns are gone. So yeah, I'm still looking for the exact moment at which I was pretty sure I was ahead. Okay, right here, I think after they didn't take my rook, they didn't trade my rooks, I think I was pretty sure I was ahead here. Even though, again, I didn't make the best move, but once I got their free rook, I thought I'm probably doing okay. But before that, 20 moves. It was hectic, it was nerve-wracking. But I think I did the right thing most of the time, except for missing the mate in 1. I think I had enough time down there that I should have gotten it. Where was it? Okay, it was right here. How much time did I had 8 minutes left. Oh my goodness. Well, I've mentioned it before. I am bad at checkmating with knights and bishops. I'm much more accustomed to checkmating with rooks and queens, or one of those pieces with the help of a knight or bishop or multiples, or with the help of pawns. So I do have some work to do. Thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.